Yo, what's up everybody, it's Tuna. Today's video, I wanted to show you guys some strategies that I've been using to make a ton of FE in Torchlight Infinite this season. So there has been quite a few amount of different things to do, and the developers have generally actually rebalanced the game and done a lot with the endgame. And yeah, there's like a lot of really cool stuff to farm. But primarily, this video is going to be focused on T8 as well as a boss rushing strategy for T7. So it's intended for you guys that maybe are progressing from T7 and going into T8. Because really where you want to be is you want to be at T8.2, and then you want to be progressing to deep space from there. Deep space is where you're going to be getting basically twice as much loot as you would if you were doing T8 non-deep space. However, the downside is of course that the entry cost is quite high. But because the entry cost is quite high, this is where you're actually more incentivized to invest more into your beacons because of the fact that, high entry cost equals sort of like the motivation to invest more into your beacons themselves. So that's where you'll be using compasses and all this kind of stuff, as well as maximizing the amount of quantity and additional drops that you're getting from them in general. So yeah, T8 is very, very profitable, and T8-2 even more so, and Deep Space even more. So each step you will be getting 10% additional quantity from T0 to T1, that's 10% additional. But when you go to T8 Deep Space, what that does is it basically doubles the amount of loot that you're getting, and that is why it's super nice and super recommended to be going for that kind of content, because you're just going to be dropping a ton more, and it's going to make it so that like putting more juice in your maps is actually incentivized. So without further ado, let's get into some of the strategies. And the first one I will talk about is the boss rushing strategy. All right, so the nice thing about this strategy is that it can be done on basically any character, as long as you are kind of focused in a little bit on going fast, as you are incentivized to go fast with the strategy. And the strategy is intended for you guys that have not yet been able to progress into higher tiers of T8. Maybe your character still needs a little bit of juice, this is what you'll be running to make a decent amount of FE. So the strategy was actually devised by Milky BK, and he's been running it with high success as well. So it's something that I definitely wanted to recommend for you boys that are still looking to get your characters up to scratch. Now, what you're trying to be using here is you're going to be using the pity card, because this is going to be giving you additional attention points. Attention points are the sort of like, as you're progressing towards your watcher, you're going to be getting an extra chance to progress towards that watcher. So it basically makes progressing to the watcher faster. And this strategy is all about watchers per hour, so doing as many bosses per hour as possible. You're going to be basically running to the boss, killing the boss, getting beacons from it, and progressing to your watcher. And the watcher itself has, some very valuable drops as well. And yeah, because of that, you're going to want to be really doing that as fast as possible. And it's the best way to do sort of a zero investment strategy currently in the game. Now you'll want to be using the cards Mourning, Solemnity, as well as Sentimental. These are really nice because they'll be increasing the amount of beacons that you drop, and then giving you an additional chance to drop higher tier beacons. Higher tier beacons, of course, they sell for FE, and those are things that you can put on the trade, on the stock exchange and that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's where you want to be putting them, all your T8 beacons. But you'll definitely want to keep your T7s so that you can spam them. Make sure that you know that you can actually use the trader in town to buy beacons and sell beacons. So if you find yourself here in town, you can go and speak to the trader, and when you click trade, you can see that he has a beacon shop as well as a compass shop, and the compass shop will be more useful later on once you go into T8, but for the beacon shop, this is where you'll be trading in and selling your beacons for T7s, right? So say that you want to be running a specific zone, like Frozen Abyss. What you'll do is you'll buy a bunch of those, and if you want to like recycle the beacons from other zones, to get a little bit of that resonance currency, what you'll do is you go here, you recycle, and you go over to your tab and you click recycle all. And basically, I don't have any at the moment, but yeah, you'll be recycling your beacons. Actually, it turns out that I do. You'll be recycling the beacons that you don't use in favor of the ones that you do use. So yeah, if you wanted to run Frozen Abyss, you'd basically be putting that away, so you wouldn't want to be recycling those. All right, so in addition to all of the beacon drops that we're getting from these 3 cards, we want to be running the Itera cards, because the Itera cards are just a great way for you to get additional loot from monsters within your maps. What they do is they will spawn packs of monsters which can drop Itera reverberations. Now, Itera reverberations are a currency, and that currency is what is used to access the the city of Itera, which is a mechanic that is actually very, very profitable and one that you should actually run if you're looking to do something outside of beacons themselves. But this video will be focused more on currencies within the beacons. So yeah, the reverberations, you can just sell them. They're a really good profit to sell as well. And what these cards will do is they will spawn packs of monsters, and it's really easy to see them on your minimap. They're just marked as green on the minimap. So yeah, as soon as you see them, just go and kill them, and they have basically a flat chance to be dropping additional loot, so the Terra reverberations themselves. Now, you have to note that because of the Solemnity card that you see here, you're actually getting minus 99% additional drop quantity inside of your beacons. So that means that like killing monsters is basically useless, right? You're not really getting anything out of killing monsters, aside for the boss itself. But that's why it's actually good to be adding the Terra cards, because they have actually a base chance to drop their loot regardless of how much negative additional drop quantity you have in your maps. But in addition to these cards, we'll also be running the Goddess of Hunting. Now, the Goddess of Hunting is a nice extra little bit of loot that you can put in your beacons, because all it is you run up to the boss, you will see this thing, the Lotus, and you click it, and then you will get an option between a few rewards. The basic thing that you do here is you would grab the one with more rewards, right? There it goes from like blue to purple to gold, and the gold one is generally always better. However, on the first page of it, you need to be mindful that in some situations it will have a specific reward tied to the downside that you're giving to the boss. But one of the really especially nice things about these cards as well is that they have a chance to duplicate the boss as well. And that is through the Perceptive Hunting card that you can see here. So that gives you a percentage chance to replicate the legendary boss, meaning that you'll get twice as much loot from the boss itself. And since the boss has a high chance of spawning, dropping beacons and that kind of stuff, that's just more beacons in general, and you will have a higher chance to proc the upgraded beacon card as well, the sentimental there. So yeah, this strategy specifically, you need to be running it in one of two zones, the Glacial Abyss or the Voidlands, because those two zones specifically give you better rewards from the watchers themselves. And the way that you check that is right in. So of course, the price on a lot of these items might fluctuate over time, but the way that you check that and so that you can stay on top of it is, for example, if I was to click onto this region right here, I could click on the watcher there in the middle, and then here right behind my camera there is a view all sort of little question mark that you can click, and as soon as you see that pops out, it tells you like literally everything that he drops. So he will drop T8 beacons, deep space beacons, and all of these uniques. And the way that you could do this is you could just basically check on the exchange what each of these rewards actually cost. And yeah, so but at the time of recording right now, the two best regions to run are going to be the Glacial Abyss as well as the Voidlands. So yeah, but if you ever want to double check the rewards and what they drop, you can always do that here by just clicking that and looking through their loot and yeah, basically price checking that on the trade. All right, so now that you farmed a bunch of FE doing boss rushing or just any other strategy like Itera or the lead mechanic as well, you want to be getting into T8 deep space juicing. So T8 deep space is where a lot of the loot drops. And you're gonna want to be, so this strategy is kind of more specializing in adding as many monsters to your maps as possible and just packing all of them in and then trying to get as much loot as possible from those monsters. There's gonna be a lot of times where you are proccing FE, like 10 to 20 to 30 FE procs, and that those have also the potential to be duplicated by by baseline. And in general, yeah, that is why I'll be going for as much monsters as possible and as many mechanics as possible. But there are a few synergies here. So Dark Surge is really nice because Dark Surge is one of those unobtrusive mechanics that you can just pop at the end of the beacon and you'll just kill it as you're killing the boss as well. And if you have an explode build, it's really nice in case you ever come across a monster that is very tanky. You just click the V key, spawn a bunch of mobs, and then they explode that rare along with it. So that's also a really nice way to get a little bit of extra clear, and it's something that I definitely used a lot as well. But yeah, you'll be going for the Honest, Just, Addicted, and Reserved card, and what that will do is that will just make you have more of that Dark Surge juice, and will have additional monsters basically influenced by the Dark Surge. So you'll just get more of it and more rerolls as well, and the rerolls will cost less. By rerolls, I mean like the amount of times you can click V. So the rewards themselves from the Dark Surge are generally not that insane unless you actually proc a very good reward. However, the monsters themselves actually do drop a lot of loot, so that's kind of what you are looking to get from them. But if you do ever proc a commodity reward from them, it's pretty damn insane. You can get like a lot of currency from it. Now, the next is going to be the Conquest cards, the God of War. So God of War is actually insane because not only does it make your beacons faster, you run super quick through them, but also it gives you additional drop quantity depending on how many stages you have completed. And that is going to be here through the Righteous card. The Righteous card gives you 4% bonus drop quantity in Trial of God. So Trial God of War for every floor. And there are 10 floors. But when you use the Proud Conquest card, there are 13 floors, but the downside of that is that you have negative 50% additional damage. So if your build is not yet actually able to clear these efficiently, this is the one that you would actually swap out for literally any other card, like a cube card or something like that to get more mobs from there. So yeah, if your damage is a little bit struggling, replace this one for a cube card. Now, the next one is going to be Fearless Conquest, and Fearless Conquest will give you additional drop quantity when reaching new stages as well. And as I said, that synergizes really well with the additional stages too. And then you have Honest Conquest 2, which gives you more gameplay progress towards killing monsters. So as you kill monsters, the bar will go up faster, and the faster it goes, the higher your quantity you get earlier on inside of your map. So you'll basically cap out at 10 or 13 very early on, and then you'll be clearing the rest of your map with that additional quantity from the God of War, which is really good. And that's also why we want to get additional God of War trial duration, because this will stack additively with yourself. Every round will have 25% increased duration, and as you're going progressing the rounds, you'll get to the end and you'll have like 50 seconds to clear the rest of your beacon or something like that, depending on if you've actually progressed through the rounds really fast. God of War is really, really good, and it's something that basically any juicer strat uses, not only to go fast, but also for the additional quantity. The next cards that you'll use are going to be the Nightmare, as well as the Dream. So that's Calm, Nightmare, and Dreams Come True from the Nightmare. These are really good because the Nightmare itself, once you have progress through the meta progression and spec through the right side of the Nightmare tree to get more use out of the, the in-map mechanic, you're going to be getting a ton of loot from the monsters that spawn when you are in the Nightmare, but also you'll be getting an additional stage when you do enter the Nightmare, and the Nightmare itself also gives you a lot of loot. And this kind of is something that can't be taught in this video, but you'll have to kind of like manage the reward that you are getting from the Nightmare, and something that you'll have to sort of like get a little bit of a gist for as you're progressing and doing that mechanic. But in general, even if you don't know what you're doing, like some cases when I first started using this myself, it's still a lot of loot from just the monsters that spawn in your maps when you have the Nightmare present, right? Because they spawn a lot of rares, and those rares will give you a lot of loot. The next card is going to be Yearning Cube. Cube is really nice as well because you have so many mobs that spawn from the cube, and those Desire Incarnations is what they're called. Yeah, there's really like so many mobs that spawn. And because you are using the beacon, you're spawning them, there's going to be additional chance for Desire Incarnations to appear in the stage. Now, you do have to actually spec into the tree here as well in a specific way, and I'll show you guys right now. Alright, so if you find yourself in town, you basically just want to walk up to the Heart of Rapacity here, and then you click Avarice Code. And Avarice Code is where you can spec into your tree. So this is something that you'll have to progress little by little as you are using the cube more and more. But the best thing that I found to use is to go for Avatar of Desire, because it gives you a pretty decently high chance to spawn the Malice Judge. And the Malice Judge is just this big dude that when you kill him, it just loot everywhere. It's really nice. It drops like a lot of FE, and it drops a lot of the specific currency to reroll slates and that sort of stuff. So yeah, you'll have like just so much of that slate currency, and the slate currency is actually very cheap and not something that you generally sell, but you are using the cube to just spawn more rares into your maps, and those rares just drop a ton of extra loot, so that's really nice. Now lastly, as I previously said in the video, like this is a strat where you want to be using the compasses, and the compasses are quite expensive, but they can be bought from the trader in town, so make sure that you're buying them there instead of the auction house. And you'll want to be using the Conquest as well as the Dark Surge, the Nightmare, and the Cube Compass all together. Because you are actually not putting any cards into your deck that have a percentage chance to spawn those mechanics, if you forget to use the compass, it just won't appear. So that's just wasted juice, and yeah, you don't want to do that. So yeah, basically you want to be running those compasses, and you can run any legion and any zone that you prefer. It doesn't really matter. I tend to prefer going for the ice zone because my character was generally it was more favorable to run those kinds of layouts. But you can run any layout that you prefer. It doesn't really matter all that much. Now for the last strategy, this is going to be kind of reserved to more strong characters that have higher single target, however do not really have the most amazing speed, because it's a strategy that does not revolve around having to keep up momentum in your beacons themselves. It's more around mechanics that are more stationary, so like God of Might and God of Machines, and these are also really good loot. Like it's not like any less good than the previous strategy, but it does require kind of a build that can tank damage over time, as well as a build that has pretty decently high single target, and it is favorable to also have explode, as a lot of the monsters spawn tightly together. But this strat will sort of focus more on killing Might as well as Machines, and you want to only be using two beacons, two compasses, which are the Might and Machine compass, and you'll just be kind of going more towards rushing towards that content, doing that, killing the boss, and then going again. Now these are pretty insane because you have the persistent Might card, which gives you one max additional floor, and every floor you have within the Might mechanic you get loot. And then on top of that, you also have an additional card here that gives you more quantity and even more additional quantity per stage. So having additional stages will give you more quant per stage, of course. And there's also a small, chance for that for the statue to be activatable one extra time. So at level 1 in every 10 maps, you will get a God of Might statue that can be activated twice. And on top of that, the Relentless card gives you a pair of Dwarven automatons spawning from each stage, and those guys will just drop additional loot. That's really nice. Now the Thrill card is something that I like adding because it makes the area of the damage over time 60% smaller, meaning that even if you don't have like really good regeneration or something like that, the damage over time, there will definitely be places within the circle where you can dodge the damage over time, and you won't basically like just spam die to this mechanic, because dying basically means that you just like lost all your loot, and that's not good. But yeah, in addition to the Might, we're going to be using the Machines as well, and the Machines kind of works in the same way as Might, but you won't really have to worry about damage over time on the floor. Rather, it's sort of like a tower defense where monsters will walk towards this thing in the middle, and you want to protect it. So if the monsters reach it, they will deal damage to it, and if it's if they kill it, then you get no loot, but if you kill them, then you get loot per stage. And the cards are more focused around more stages, harder monsters, and getting more loot per those stages. In addition, there's also Tolerant, which spawns additional drones, and those drones will just basically be trying to attack your statue. So you do have to have a pretty good damage and clear to make sure that those guys are not killing your statue, and that you're killing them for the extra loot and rewards and stuff like that too. So yeah, this is also a really good strat for T8 and T8 deep space, but the compasses themselves cost really a lot, so doing things that don't have a percentage chance to spawn by themselves in T8 deep space is where you want to be using your compasses, because yeah, you losing cards to percentage chances and having mechanics not spawn in your T8 deep space beacons really sucks, because the beacons themselves are really expensive. When I last checked, they were about 35, and they're going up daily, although at some point they'll have to stop. But if you ever get to a point where maybe you feel like you don't want to be doing anything that's like too high investment, then you can always just go back to boss rushing, or you could be running the City of Vetera itself, or the new mechanic is just insane as well, right? Like the new mechanic is probably the most FEs you can make in the game currently. So yeah, and I also have sort of like a small video about that you guys can check out. So yeah, that is about all. Those are like 3 main things that I really enjoyed running this season. And of course, things might be subject to change in the future if XD chooses to patch things and whatnot. But as it is of right now, I think any of you guys will probably have pretty good success running this kind of stuff. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Peace out, everybody.